Hello and welcome to the LLG Grapevine podcast. You're listening to Deborah Evans, CEO at LLG, and Dennis Hall, our LLG Bulletin Editor.
Hello everyone.
Now, good policy is the bedrock of any local authority, and of course one important element of compliance is consideration of the public sector equality duty. Dennis.
Well, yes indeed, Deborah. Local government lawyers often advise others on the preparation of policy statements that then go forward for approval either by council or cabinet. They could cover any function or activity of the council. Drafting policy is a tortuous process, but a common factor across the council's activities is the need to comply with the public sector equality duty. The Equalities and Human Rights Commission has just published a useful 10-point guide to assist. So let's take a closer look at this. This guide is for public authorities and organisations delivering a public function in England. Here's a summary of the main elements. But I should mention there's a separate guidance that's been issued for public bodies in Wales. The 10-step guide provides information about how to consider the equality impact of policies in a structured, consistent and accountable way. And this will help policymakers and their legal advisors to comply with the Public Sector Equality Duty, the PSED, as set out in the Equality Act 2010. The 10-step guide includes practical guidance on how to comply with the law and how to demonstrate best practice. And it provides tips and reminders on legal principles and provides advice on how to keep your equality considerations relevant and proportionate. And finally, there are examples to illustrate how organisations can implement the steps in the guidance. So here are the main steps. 1. Define a clear policy proposal in the first instance. 2. Gather evidence to inform your initial equality screening and record your conclusions. 3. Draw plans for monitoring and reporting on actual impact of the proposals. 4. Gather further evidence if needed. 5. Use all evidence to inform your full equality considerations and record the equality impact. Use the evidence you have to complete your initial equality considerations, using the same questions as listed under step 2. 6. Finalize your equality considerations and produce your actions, monitoring and reporting plans. 7. Present all relevant information to your decision makers and record the decision. You must present relevant information to your decision makers, such as ministers, board members, or directors, and they can then make an informed decision on whether to implement the initial policy. 8. Collect evidence to monitor actual impact. This is important. You must collect evidence to monitor whether your policy is actually having an impact on people with particular protected characteristics. 9. Always update your equality considerations, and you should update your equality considerations according to the evidence you gather on the actual impact of your policy and the effects of the action you have taken to mitigate negative impact and maximize positive impact. And finally, 10. Present your updated equality considerations to your decision makers and record those decisions. Deborah.
Now, I think an important part of compliance, Dennis, is ensuring it isn't just a tick box exercise, that meaningful consideration is applied and demonstrated. Now, in other news, statutory inquiries have been much in the news of late, with the Grenfell inquiry, the Post Office inquiry and the ongoing COVID and blood contamination inquiry. However, the House of Lords Statutory Inquiries Committee have said that public inquiries are failing too often, chiefly because when they report, there is no obligation on the government to act. Now, the Statutory Inquiries Committee was appointed in January 2024 to consider the efficacy of the law and practice relating to a statutory public inquiry held under the Inquiries Act 2005. Now, this is the second time that the 2005 Act has been reviewed by a committee of the House of Lords, having previously been considered by the Inquiries Act 2005 Committee in 2014. In its report, the 2014 committee described public inquiries as a major feature of our unwritten constitution that plays an important part in the way the executive deals with major crises. Now, the committee found 4 areas which it determined the need for change. They are, firstly, the way that inquiries are designed and established. Next, ensuring that the accepted recommendations from the previous 2014 House of Lords report into public inquiries are put into effect by the government. Then, how public inquiry recommendations are monitored to ensure they are implemented by the government. And finally, enhancing the role of the Cabinet Office's Inquiries Unit. Now, there are a number of recommendations from the committee highlighting the fact that the voice of the chair and the choice of the chair is crucial to the success of the inquiry and should be made by a minister based on the purpose and requirements of that particular inquiry. So ministers should select the legal basis and chair of an inquiry on a case-by-case basis and not feel tied to a particular model. The government should ensure that future inquiries build on the good work of recent inquiries and better involve victims and survivors, and that inquiries should provide regular public updates on their work, both administrative activities as well as public hearings. Longer inquiries should, where appropriate, publish interim reports. The committee also recommended that formal implementation of monitoring should be undertaken by a new joint select committee of Parliament, the Public Inquiries Committee, and that a new committee on public inquiries should be resourced to discharge the following functions: publishing inquiry reports and government responses in one place, online, and monitoring the implementation of accepted public inquiry and major inquest recommendations through policy research, correspondence with government departments, and evidence sessions with ministers and officials. Now, the full report can be found on the parliamentary website. And Dennis, I'm hopeful that will deal with a number of your previous thoughts around the fact that inquiries come out with great recommendations that are never then implemented. Moving on, home working is the norm for most people these days, with attendance at the office a few days a week for most. But what should employers be thinking about in terms of the health and safety of their home working staff? Dennis.
Well, Deborah, on that question, that we now have some help from the Health and Safety Executive, who've just published guidance on home working. Invariably, we all do this nowadays, and employers must be prepared to engage and react to the issues for staff that this involves. So here's more on this. Before the COVID pandemic, 4.7% of employed British people work from home, but now 40% say they work from home at least one day a week. As an employer, you have the same health and safety responsibilities for people working at home as for any other worker. This latest guidance from the HSE applies to those who work at home long-term and routinely split their time between their workplace and home, sometimes nowadays called hybrid working. Most of the time, risks to home workers will be low, and the actions you should take to protect them will be straightforward. But things that you should consider as an employer as part of your risk assessment for home workers include stress and poor mental health, using equipment like computers and laptops safely, and also consider their working environment. You should also talk to your workers about their arrangements, as working from home may not be suitable for everyone. For example, some people may not have an appropriate place to work, or may prefer to come into the workplace for well-being, mental health, or other reasons. Now, on this issue of stress and mental health, you must protect workers from stress at work by doing a risk assessment and acting on it. This also applies equally to home workers as any other workers. Home workers will face many of the same issues as any other worker, but it can be difficult to provide adequate support and maintain social links. People who are deprived of social contact through work can feel isolated or disconnected, bringing on pressure and stress or aggravating pre-existing mental health problems. And finally, the Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds spoke positively about flexible work arrangements and against a culture of presenteeism in an interview the other week. and the government is reportedly looking at strengthening working from home rights in its forthcoming employment bill. Deborah.
Well, homework suits some people and not others. Both Dennis and I are broadcasting from home as we speak, but it's all about personal circumstance. Now, on the theme of encouraging dialogue at work, the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny and the Local Government Association are piloting a development programme this autumn aimed at enhancing dialogue and coordination between chairs of scrutiny committees and chairs of audit committees. Now, the Centre are looking for a small number of chairs with varying levels of experience to participate. Now, participants who are scrutiny chairs should be the current chair of whichever committee takes a lead on corporate finance issues. Now, this development will focus on core duties, the regulatory and other duties held by audit committees and scrutiny committees, and how these responsibilities intersect. Relationships, current experiences regarding member-member and member-officer relationships, and how those relationships can be improved. Skills, the skill sets needed to carry out chairing duties on scrutiny and audit, required knowledge on local government finance and wider oversight skills, and support arrangements, experiences and expectations with regard to officer support and how members can support each other. Now, discussion of these factors, key to the effectiveness of the scrutiny and audit functions, will lead to two outcomes. The first is the development by participants of plans for their own ongoing self-directed learning and development. The second is development of ideas for changes to practice in their own authorities and tactics to bring those changes about. The Centre plan to divide participants into two cohorts, each comprising about 20 people, with a roughly equal number of audit and scrutiny chairs in each. So, do you have suitable chairs who might be interested? If so, encourage them to contact Ed Hammond at the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny by the end of the day on the 3rd of October, which, as we know, is coming very soon. So, whilst I'm on the subject of Ed, we will be holding a further constitutional clinic at the end of October, start of November, to take that work forward, and certainly the last one was very well received. Now, at LLG, we love to support our junior lawyers to engage and grow. So what's the sector telling us about juniors, Dennis?
Well, this is interesting. According to a Law Society Gazette article, junior lawyers are entering the profession at a most exciting time. So let's see why. Trainee lawyers will develop different skill sets to senior lawyers today as they adapt to the change brought by firms' growing use of generative AI. And this is what experts told the recent Junior Solicitors Network Summit. The all-day event held at the London offices of CMS covered a range of topics through panels and discussions, including resilience, networking, financial well-being, and routes to qualification. Oliver Jeffcott, Senior Legal Technology Manager at McFarland's, speaking on the Data and Tech Literacy panel, said the technology and its accessibility now meant that today was a pretty exciting time for access to justice. As you see, small firms also have access to generative technologies. And Jeff Wright, a director at national firm Foote Anstey, told the audience not to be overwhelmed by the changing technological landscape. He said over the years, the profession has changed hugely. A lot of functions the tech is performing are actually targeting some of those tasks normally performed by juniors. That this is the stuff you cut your teeth with. It is taking away those tasks which present a clear and present danger, he said. And Ella Crickler of Mishcon de Rere said, I'm much less worried about people not having skills in 20 years' time to be able to do something. I just think that the skill set of senior lawyers in 20 years will be so different, and that is no bad thing. But speaking on the resilience in the workplace panel, Esther Gamble, a barrister at No. 5 Barristers' Chambers, said, however, that bullying and harassment are unbelievably widespread in the legal sector, despite changing attitudes. She advised junior lawyers to familiarise themselves with their workplace's procedures and policies, and to find out who is the go-to person. She added, if you can build at least a bit of a relationship with that person, it really will help you if it comes to a point when you need them. And she said, also look after yourself. If you're stressed and sleep deprived, everything seems worse, and anything negative will affect you more. Donna Smith, Director of Ordinata Transformation Coaching, said that coping techniques which could be used when things at work do not go well include accepting the cause of the stress for what it is, and extracting from it whatever good you can find and letting the rest go. And finally, Donna added, celebrate your achievements. And I do not mean just the big ones. I mean the little ones, the everyday ones. Well, Deborah, of course, we do that, don't we?
We absolutely do, Dennis, and it's a really important part of enjoying the working day is to share those small successes with the team as well as celebrating the big ones. So one of the things I'm concerned about with respect to junior lawyers is the impact that home working and hybrid working is having on their ability to see good role modelling by other lawyers and to learn on the job. Which is something else I think needs a little bit of thought to make it work well. But what do we do then, Dennis? Yes, we've got bespoke junior groups for learning and networking. We provide bursaries for attendance at our conference, and that's all about getting people out in person and building your networks and being able to talk to other people about the things that you're seeing in your authority. And we also have junior representatives throughout the regions, although we're still looking for a junior representative in London. So if any of you out there in London have ambitions to grow your career and get more involved and shape the future, then please get in touch and find out more. Now, in devolution news, the government has signed off on agreements for directly elected mayors for Greater Lincolnshire and East Riding of Yorkshire and Hull. Now, the former of these deals will be established using a combined county authority consisting of the county council and 2 neighbouring unitary authorities, with the latter being a combined authority of 2 unitary authorities. Now, 2 further non-mayoral combined county authorities were also signed off for Lancashire and Devon and Torbay. In addition, the government said it was minded to approve level 2 agreements with Cornwall Council, Surrey County Council, Warwickshire County Council and Buckinghamshire Council. However, the government has confirmed that level 3 single county deals in Norfolk and Suffolk will no longer proceed. Now, this is widely reported to be due to minister views that it was not ambitious enough and only made provision for a directly elected leader rather than a mayor, despite agreement from the previous government. Certainly, it has been widely reported that Minister Jim McMahon strongly believes that a directly elected mayor will be removed from party politics and be more independent. So clearly a bit of ambition with respect to mayors is the way forward. Tim Oliver, chairman of the County Councils Network, said in response to announcements that CCN acknowledges that the government's preferred option is for a mayoral combined authority with mayors covering larger geographical areas than just a single county footprint. But it is clear that a directly elected mayor is not the right form of governance for some CCN members at this time, and we should avoid revisiting previously agreed geographies at a time when all areas need to be driving economic growth and rapidly. It is critical that the government now continues to work positively with CCN and its members to ensure that within the forthcoming devolution framework and English devolution bill, the CCA model becomes the default arrangement in non-metropolitan areas, while confirming all future deals cover whole county geographies. Moreover, non-mayoral deals should be progressed at the same pace as mayoral arrangements if the government wants to realise its ambitions to both widen and deepen devolution in England. And on that note, you can read more on the items discussed today and many, many more besides by going to Bulletin 36, available on the LLG website now. So it's goodbye from me.
And from me too. Goodbye.
Goodbye.